Our deep dive is into illegal miners because there has been yet another blow-up over illegal mining, this time involving the police, ministers, and the northwest town of Stilfontein. Let's get into it. For the last few weeks, South Africa has been watching Stilfontein, a tiny town in between Klerksdorp and Potchefstroom in Northwest Province. The police cut off supply lines to Zama Zamas, that's illegal miners, working underground there a few months ago. Zama Zamas, the South African term for illegal miners, loosely can be translated into English as meaning take a chance. It's a pretty perfect name for illegal miners because many of them take crazy risks and put themselves in unbelievable danger in the hope that they will come across some gold that would completely transform their fortunes. The police's intention was to starve the miners out and then arrest them for illegally mining once they came to the surface. And this has led to an awful situation where miners are fighting over whatever food remains underground that they can get, becoming too weak to actually get out of the mines, and in some cases dying down underground. Some miners are falling apart because they haven't been able to get necessary medication that they need, like ARVs, since the police stopped the supply lines. And in recent days, more than 1,000 illegal miners have come out of the mines and been arrested. This is just the latest incident in the police's battle against illegal miners. And the same debate that we've seen so many times before has raged over how to deal with the crisis. On the one hand, these are people committing crimes who need to be stopped. As we will explain, you can't just go down into hundreds to thousands of kilometers of extremely dangerous tunnels and detain thousands of people, some of whom are heavily armed. But on the other hand, we should just ideally not be starving human beings, not by the authorities in particular, potentially to death. But every time this happens, so much of the complexity of illegal mining is missed and misunderstood. So let's talk about Zama Zamas. We're going to answer three questions. One, what is really going on underground? Two, why is it happening? And three, what needs to be done to stop it? And let's start with what is really going on down there, because I think a lot of people don't really know what is happening underground. When you think of illegal mining, what you probably think of is young immigrant men covered in dust coming out of old tunnels, terrorizing local communities and committing crimes. But to properly understand illegal mining, we first need to understand the different kinds of people that we as South Africans broadly call Zama Zamas. There are young immigrant men going down abandoned mine shafts for days, weeks, months, and in some cases, even years underground, looking for gold to sell. Some South Africans also do this. And then there's some Zama Zamas who don't go underground at all. They sift through piles of dug-up rock lying around old mining towns in search for gold. Then there are heavily armed gangs running criminal syndicates that fight over old mine tunnels with assault rifles, literally. And once they've secured their turf, they bring vulnerable, impoverished, unemployed men in to work through the tunnels looking for gold for them. And then there are also guns for hire who the gangs contract to take out rival gang members and bosses. A lot of South African media calls all of these kinds of people Zama Zamas without distinguishing them, which is pretty unhelpful in understanding how complicated it is to try and deal with the illegal mining crisis. When we talk about miners underground, we are talking about some lone prospectors or small groups wandering through abandoned shafts that are not controlled by gangs. And then there are territories of tunnels controlled and fought over by the gangs and mined by vulnerable, impoverished, often immigrant men. And guys, you need to understand, these mine shafts in South Africa are some of the deepest shafts in the world. Some of these tunnels go 2 kilometers straight down underground. And the network of tunnels is massive. You can walk for days and days underground without once retracing your steps or coming to an exit. Many Zama Zamas don't see the sun for months or years. And it's insanely dangerous underground. It can get incredibly hot down there, like 40 degrees hot in these dark tunnels. Toxic gases can build up that make you sick or kill you. Sometimes mining can create sparks that cause those gases to explode, and then you die. You can be crushed by rockfalls. You can drown from flooding down there. Rockfalls and flooding can also trap you down in tunnels that you can't get out of. You can also be shot by rival gangs trying to capture the area you are mining. There are supply chains that go down the mines providing food and medication to miners underground. If that supply chain is disrupted or cut off, you just starve. Zama Zamas surfacing at Stilfontein described living off of a mix of toothpaste and toilet paper. That's it. Like the worst pup ever. For months. Zama Zamas spoke of having to drink contaminated water lying under the ground in the tunnels and getting sick from it. You're probably wondering how Zama Zamas communicate in this vast network of tunnels in the dark. They say they have laid down internet cables underground so people can get signal and use WhatsApp down there. But if those cables get damaged or cut off, you're on your own. And every part of this, I'm sure you'll agree, every part of the situation sounds like the worst nightmare I have ever had. But altogether, it just sounds like hell. So question 2, why is it happening? Why are so many men risking their lives and well-being in these terrible circumstances? The obvious basic answer is gold, but that's like the entry-level grade 3 answer. Because millions of people who live around those areas aren't going underground looking for gold. Most even poorer people who live around the gold reefs don't go seeking gold underground because it's awful, as I just described. Illegal mining truly exists because of extreme poverty and calamitous unemployment. There are just often no better opportunities. In many cases, it's literally a question of survival. When mines close and big business leaves, whole communities can lose their jobs in a week. And these mining towns have next to no other industries for people to seek work in. Stilfontein, the town, was established soon after World War II because of 3 big gold mines in that area. They needed an area for people to live in while they worked Stilfontein Mine, Buffelsfontein Mine, and Hartbeesfontein Mine. The town was literally built on the mining economy, but then many of the mines closed. Some of the mining companies left, and the town was crippled. And also, some mines were closed down, not because they ran out of gold, but because the gold became too expensive to extract at industrial scale. Buffelsfontein still has an estimated $30 billion worth of gold down there. And suddenly, there were all these jobless miners who knew where the gold was, so they went down and used whatever they had to mine the gold, bring it back up, and sell it. The deeper they went underground, the longer they stayed down there, the more they needed provisions. So people began supplying food and medication and transporting them down to the miners. And that meant more jobs for more people, more money for more homes. And more money for more homes meant all the other kinds of traditional businesses in the town had customers, from fast food restaurants to furniture stores. This is how small towns limp on when the big mining companies leave. Illegal mining replaced legal mining as the lifeblood of these communities. And this is why, when the police cut off those supply lines to the Zama Zamas, the local communities often protest. The miners underground are people's family, neighbors, friends, and they are also customers who provide business. People know that if the Zama Zamas are stopped, they're all in trouble. Now, I know you may be shrugging and muttering at the TV right now, damn, crime is crime. People who rely on criminality can't be prioritized over stopping criminals. And I hear you on that. But in response, I must ask, what would you do in that situation, where all the jobs in your community disappeared, where there were no other jobs, no other ways of making money, and you were faced with total poverty? And that brings us to our final question. What truly needs to be done to stop illegal mining? Because the shock and awe tactics of the police coming in once every year to try and scare miners out, clearly not dissuading people. So what really needs to be done to stop illegal mining? And that's a really hard question. It would be so dangerous and so expensive to send the police or even the army down into the mines to try and arrest Zama Zamas and have a shootout with these gangs underground. We don't know nearly as much as them about the tunnel networks, and sending our police into such dangerous, health-harming circumstances just doesn't seem right. But starving, impoverished people who are mining illegally in terrible conditions just to survive and make money and food on the table, starving them, that doesn't feel right either. The vast majority of the thousands of Zama Zamas are not heavily armed gangsters or bosses making a fortune off of the gold. They're desperate people just trying to get by. And if you had no better options, you would also do what you needed to do. A Zama Zama who surfaced this week said he would go back down underground the second he could, because underground there was gold that he could sell to pay for his family's needs for months. The only way to change the incentives is to provide better options. Places like Stilfontein need radical government interventions to create jobs for people and stimulate new industries that can make work for former miners when the mining companies leave. Our government just should have been doing that already, and mining companies should be made to help. They make filthy profits off of our natural resources. They should be funding and developing training and educational programs with the government to make communities resilient and able to find other and make other kinds of work long before the mining companies close the mines. And it's also the mining companies' responsibility to close these mines and make sure they stay closed, inaccessible, unusable, so that Zama Zamas can't go down there at all. And until all of that happens, people trapped in desperate circumstances will continue to do what they need to do to survive. We need government and big business to be made by us, the people in a democracy, through pressure. We need to make them radically overhaul the local economies of these former mining towns so that Zama Zamas don't have to be Zama Zamas. I hope that makes sense.